and welcome to Hypothetically Intentional, where we ask the question, what if we set intentions with everything we do? I'm your host, Michelle Alvers. Today, I have Carey Kirkella, who is an award-winning photographer, creator of the L.E.N.S method, and quite frankly, I'm really excited to learn more about all those things.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hi. So before we drop in and I start peppering you with questions, which that sounds horrible, I won't do it that way. I would like to set an intention for today.
Sounds
And
good.
I feel like my intention for today is to ask really good questions, lean into a really good conversation, and with the intention of it helping our listeners on some level. And I don't know, there's something about this conversation that I feel like is gonna have one of those, I don't know if random is the right word, but really like different, obscure kind of a aha moment that is available to the listeners. And I don't even know why I'm saying that, because to be fair, you and I have never actually met or had a conversation one-to-one. We met in a group briefly and connected that way, and that's about it. So welcome, and I'm excited that you're here. I really appreciate you leaning into.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I feel like your intuition is probably spot on. So
I'm a little bit like, gosh, where do we start? Do we start with the award-winning photography, or like before we hit record, you mentioned an intense healing, transformational journey, and also this L.E.N.S method. So do you feel like there's a good place to start, like a place to ground in and go?
yeah, well, I would say so. My life and work has always been very intertwined. And I think that a good way to start is just kind of maybe sharing a story about how I, um, started my creative photography life, and then it led to the L.E.N.S method, and weaved in there as my mental health journey too.
All right. I'm so curious. I want to hear more.
So let's see. I manifested a full scholarship to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York City when I was 18. I know I did that by visualizing. I didn't do it on purpose, but that's what happened. And so I moved to New York City as an 18-year-old, highly sensitive empath, and really had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I fast forward to, I started working as a photo editor for the Wall Street Journal after I graduated as an assistant photo editor, actually, for the weekend section. And I was a staff photographer as well. And I really hated that job. It was really hard for me to do that kind of corporate life. And I knew that I wanted to be a photographer. I've always known that I wanted to help people in some way, but I really didn't know what that would look like yet. So one sort of side note in there is that when I worked at the Wall Street Journal, I had a premonition that the Twin Towers were going to come down somehow while I worked. It was like the year 2000 when I had this happen. I was on my lunch break and I just had this knowing. And after I quit my job soon before September 11th, 2001. And when it happened, when we had the attacks on the towers, I really shut down my intuition. I was terrified of it, really. And that caused a lot of problems in my internal and external worlds. And basically, I ended up having my first bipolar manic episode when I was 28 years old, after having a lot of stress and major lack of sleep, and also some other interesting things that happened that my whole life should probably be a book or a movie or something, because there's a lot that I could say, but I'm trying to be succinct.
Is that on the radar? Just pause. Is a book on the radar?
Yeah, I mean, not imminently, but
It's amazing.
I have a chapter in the Radical Self-Love book as part of the Creative Life book series that Jessica Hughes runs, and also the Radical Courage book. And both of them, I kind of touch on a little bit of my stories related to mental health and spirituality and the L.E.N.S method. But yeah, I need to write a whole book.
Awesome. Sorry, I didn't mean to sidetrack. I just was like, just think people telling their stories in a way where other people can connect with them when they have a story that like they had challenges, and then like you're here, an award-winning photographer with a method that I'm assuming is to help people just from what
Yes.
we've said so far. So I'm in.
Exactly.
Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. I thank you. I'm on this mission and I realized that all of the things that I've been through has led me to this.
Mm,
Right.
yeah.
And so, yeah, basically I went through 3 major periods of having, I had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. I really have different mixed feelings about what that means now. I feel like the veil between the worlds can be thinner for certain people. And I feel like there's just a lot more to it than we understand about energy. And yeah, so that's kind of been, and the second time that it happened was soon before, or sorry, after my sister passed away suddenly from breast cancer.
Mm.
She had been only diagnosed 4 months before, and she was only 40 years old. And she had inflammatory breast cancer. So that can be a faster sort of experience. So after I went through that time, I had a friend recommend I photograph breast cancer survivors as a way, or actually sisters. First, she suggested I photograph sisters as a way to help process my grief. And so that was one way that the L.E.N.S method, like sort of a seed was planted for the L.E.N.S method, because I experienced how powerful, I mean, I always knew photography is powerful. I've always, since I was a child, I either wanted to be a photographer or a psychologist of some sort, because that was how I was making sense of the world.
Yeah.
And I basically started photographing sisters, and then I started photographing breast cancer survivors with their sisters as a way to help share their stories, because so many of these women were doing something positive out of something that they had been through. They had started businesses or nonprofits, or because it was all about raising funds and awareness for stage 4 breast cancer research, which receives the least amount of funding.
Mm.
And so I've won awards for some of that work as well. And for some of my commercial photography work. So it's all been kind of a mix, fine art photography and commercial photography. And I also do brand photography. So when the pandemic, where do I go from there? Well, so then I had a journey into motherhood where after my sister passed away, I decided that my husband and I wanted to have a child, but had already been hospitalized twice for bipolar disorder related episodes, right? And so I went looking for support. I went looking for sort of, what do you call that? When it's like you're trying to get care before something happens.
Oh, yeah. I know what you
And
mean. I can't
yeah,
think of it either.
yeah. Um, and I went to a very prominent maternal mental health psychiatrist, and she just suggested I don't have children. And based on my history, but not knowing anything about me, actually. And then, I'd only met her once, but then 2 years go by and I listened to my intuition. I really was like, no, I'm really meant to have a child somehow, in some way this is supposed to happen. And it wasn't just about programming from society telling me I'm supposed to have children and all that. I really could tell. And I, I had a couple of miscarriages, and then I was also still trying to find support. And I spoke with a doula who I said, do you have any past clients that you've worked with who had gone through, having successfully had a child after, if they had bipolar disorder or if they had severe depression, whatever it was, had they, could I talk to anybody that, do you know anyone? And no one would talk to me. I couldn't find
Really?
anyone who could talk to me. And there may be more ways to find them now, but at the time, I don't know, I just didn't really think about reaching out to strangers on Instagram, or, I wasn't really. And so I vowed that I would share my story, whatever happened. I would, try to help other people through it. And I did unfortunately end up having postpartum psychosis and then postpartum anxiety, which I really believe, though, was the next huge catalyst. There were 3. This was the second huge catalyst for me to channel the L.E.N.S method, because I had to advocate for myself a lot, and I had to become the kind of mom that I wanted to be for my child. So there was just a lot that I had to grow through. And then I don't know if I should pause or there's so much that.
Well, I mean, I do have a question about, you said you had to advocate for yourself. Did that just come innately, intuitively, or did you, like, what inspired you, or what was the spark? Because I think that's a thing that a lot of people have a really hard time doing, especially if you've never done it before. So if you're okay with it, I would love
Yeah,
to ask about that.
sure. Well, when I say that, I gave birth at NYU Hospital, and it was very crowded, and I had to share a hospital recovery room with someone, and I knew that all of this sort of meant that less sleep was probably going to happen, and that was a main trigger for me, because for some people with bipolar disorder, if you don't sleep for 6 hours consecutively for days in a row, or even 2 days, and then there's all these sort of hormonal things happening, and your brain chemistry can sort of speed up, and then you can't sleep anymore, and then that's when bad things happen, hallucinations and things like that. And so I sort of had like a loose, like, okay, the on-call psychiatrist at NYU Hospital is supposed to check on me within 24 hours of the birth. And that didn't happen. And also before that, I had 26 hours of labor without sort of anyone, like it was nice that they were trying to help me avoid having a C-section. I wanted that, but it wasn't the smartest thing to do for me because, like no one was like, oh, let's look at her chart. Oh, she has bipolar disorder. She probably should sleep.
Yeah.
Nobody knows this stuff. And that's really the thing that I really want to help people with too. Just, that, I mean, I actually am working, well, I know a health advocate who helps people with things like this. And I think I should have a conversation with her about it because, it's just that communication thing, right? There's just not a lot of communication among caregivers. And, there's no, my therapist wasn't talking to my, OBGYN or anything like that, Anyway, so there was no plan. It was really just like, well, she hasn't had an episode in a long time. It's not going to happen. um, and I was also very adamant about wanting to breastfeed because there's also a lot of pressure around that. But I'm glad I did it. But also, there's a lot of pressure around that for moms, and I get it, and I'm glad I did it. And I actually breastfed my child until he was 5 years old, but that's another story because he has kind of like a inner deep anxiety himself, and that was the only way I could get him to go to sleep.
Mhm.
So, but so yeah, it's yeah, basically when they finally did send someone in to come speak with me at the hospital, I kind of knew that I was already sort of in a bit of a um I forget what the name of it is. It's like there's different stages. Hypomania, maybe. I could tell that it was starting to happen. But they sent them with a bunch of interns. Like it was like a whole crew coming
Oh,
into
wow.
the hospital room. And I was like, I don't really feel comfortable talking in front of all these people. And they didn't like that. And, it was very, and I remember just being um I don't know, like we had to go track down someone in the middle of the night in the hospital and to talk to, and then finally they were like, yeah, she needs to go to another facility. And so I did that for 2 weeks, and I learned how to use the hospital grade breast milk pump, and that was my mission: just drink a gallon of water and survive and get through this terror. And my husband and mom took care of our newborn for the first 2 weeks of his life without me. So that was really hard.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I advocated a lot to get out of there because they wanted to keep me there longer. And they didn't really understand, they don't really know when you don't know someone's full history and you don't know that they're not actually a danger to themselves or others. It's kind of, and that they may not be, because for me, when I've had these episodes, And this one was particularly intense. I hear and see, and like everything, I see things that are not quite there, or hear things that are, I don't know, like maybe some on some level, like energy. I basically hear and see energy. And it's and that's, pretty scary. So, but I also had a premonition while I was at that hospital that I would come back someday and help these people somehow.
Mm.
And I just knew that was part of the journey, and that's why I was going through it. So I hope that helps answer that question.
Yeah, what I heard in that is that you were mindful about what you needed and spoke up for it. Like you weren't afraid to, like you weren't comfortable with interns in the room and you said no, and you knew you didn't need to stay there longer than 2 weeks, and so you spoke up and found a way to advocate for yourself. Yeah, that was my question. I was just curious how, because I think so many times it's hard for us to, I don't know, I think sometimes we're told that authority knows better than you. And I just like, I mean, I used to show up in that way. And now I'm just like, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure I know me best. And I'm not afraid I might be wrong. I'm not saying I'm always right, but I also am like willing to voice what I think I might need and let's have a conversation about it versus you just dictating to me what you tell me is good.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
what I heard in what you said is that you were able to notice what you felt like you needed and then have a conversation about that. And that actually took you somewhere that you needed to go as opposed to just tucking in and saying, okay. And I think
Yeah.
that's so important. Medical, especially, I find that and in stories that I hear from people is that happens a lot is they just assume that the medical professionals know best. And I'm not taking anything away from medical professionals or saying that they don't know. I'm saying a partnership is important, that all parties be considered, the wisdom of
Yeah.
all parties.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, for me, it was sort of more because I wasn't really at that point yet where I could really know that I did know best, but I just had this really strong instinct about it. I was like, it's
Yeah.
going to be better in the long run for me to get home to my child now than to wait any longer. It was just, and I really wasn't thinking about long-term trauma about him, for him or anything like that. It was just kind of like, this is what needs to be done. I don't know why, but I just need
Yeah.
someone to listen to me.
Right. Yeah. And I need to make
Luckily,
it clear, like, I'm not medically trained. You're not medically trained. We're not giving advice here. We're telling
no.
a story,
Yeah.
we're telling your story.
Yeah, I really had, I have learned more since then, especially after having gone through having a 2-year old with the pandemic. And now after that, my son has, basically it's something they call it pathological demand avoidance, but basically it's an inner, it's a deep anxiety that it's where your body is a little bit stuck in a state of fight or flight. And for him, it affects his tactile system. And so we've been through a lot where he can't wear clothes for months at a time. We can't leave our apartment for months at a time. It's happened twice related to school trauma. So now I'm homeschooling, I'm unschooling. I had to learn about all that. I had to really, I'm still on this journey of listening to my higher guidance and trying to tune out all the noise around me and just, now I'm advocating for both he and I.
Yeah. I'm curious about the journey that you mentioned with regard to using your photography to navigate grief, I think is what I heard in that.
Yep, there's grief, there's healing, there's self-reflection. It's a lot.
Yeah.
I think that the last sort of catalyst was during the beginning of when COVID started. We My husband and son and our dog, we packed up and we got out of New York City. Thankfully, we were able to go to an in-laws condo that they weren't using, and near a beach, and it was like heaven to me. I could live there forever. But there was also a lot of anxiety everywhere, and I could feel all that too. And I couldn't make photos of people anymore, right? I was like just taking care of my 2-year-old son, and I was taking photos with my phone because that's what I carried around with me all the time. And there's this one series of images that I feel like was the biggest catalyst for the lens method, because I had already been sort of thinking about it, but it didn't have a name yet, and it didn't have, I didn't have the framework for it yet. But I started. Well, I have a series of photos. It was on Earth Day, and my son and I were outside, and he was really afraid that his hat was going to be blown away by the wind. And I have a photo of him laying on the grass with his hat next to him, and he looks sad. And then I have a photo of a dandelion where all the little fuzzy stems are clinging to its stem, despite the wind. And then I have a photo of each time a strong breeze would blow, he would run to me and I would pick him up. So I have a photo of him kind of like running at me, looking kind of scared. And then I have a photo of our shadows. I'm holding him and I can see our shadows. And it reminded me of just these like sturdy, tall tree trunks. And then there's a self portrait I did in a car window with my eyes closed, looking tired. and and the caption, I had posted it on Instagram, and the caption read, "I'll I'll do my best to teach you that you're stronger than you think you are, and remind myself of the same in the process." And when I looked back at these images, I thought, this is a really powerful process, and anyone who with access to a smartphone camera, can do this. And that's really when it was like a light bulb moment for me, where I was like, I can help other people learn how to do this. It could be great for teenagers. And I have this whole huge vision for the lens method now. And since then, a couple of years later, I did a grant. I won a grant through the Brooklyn Public Library and ran my program, my full program, um, for adults at the Park Slope branch, and it was so amazing. It was really powerful to see all these strangers coming together each week. Every week, people would come from New Jersey and Bay Ridge, like really far away, because they loved it so much. And I would give them inspiration, and I would share slides of my work and my story. I'm just sharing my story through my photos and showing people how I'm using this process as a way to heal and to grow. And I share about the 5 pillars of emotional resilience through the L.E.N.S method. So there's different photo story prompts based on mindfulness, self-awareness, self-care, positive relationships, and purpose. And I have, there's a lot of courses sort of in there too, but that's like the flagship, right? And then we had an exhibit at the end where I curated, chose, I think there were like really 30 regulars at that point by the end of the 5 weeks. And so they had, money in the grant for an exhibit. So we did 4 prints maybe per person. And it was so powerful. It was amazing because, people from all walks of life were talking about their lives through their photos, right? And it wasn't like when you're sharing on social media, this is not the same effect. um, because I had, for example, someone who's taking care of her mom who has dementia. And there was for my gratitude, or sorry, for my self awareness prompt, I encourage people to create photos about gratitude using the 3 L's framework. So light, love, and laughter. Mm-hmm. And one of the photos that this particular woman made was of her mom at the optometrist, where she was like sitting behind one of all those little lenses. Yeah. And it was really an interesting, powerful photo. And it got the whole room chatting about, well, basically she shared that her mom always prided herself on having a great sense of humor. And she also now sees the world so differently because she's going through dementia. And, it just kind of sparked this whole conversation about that, and about dementia, about caregiving, about just so many things. And that was really it was really powerful. And so now I'm working on creating an online program for that same kind of, that same framework. And yeah, that's kind of the L.E.N.S method in a nutshell.
So when they have a picture, they actually have a story with the picture? Like that's how you know about her mom and her sense of humor and how she sees the world differently? Or is it just the picture and it's the photographer that knows that story and then chooses to share it if they choose to?
Exactly. Yeah, it's
So
that
it
one.
is a personal journey, not necessarily one that is about the public in any way, shape, or form.
Right. But
Okay,
because we're
that's cool.
sharing in the pub, we're sharing in this group, then it becomes this, you know, more public kind of forum. But at the same time, there's no requirements to post anything or anything
Yeah.
like that. It's really for yourself.
Well, it's a very different thing to take a photo for your own healing journey with the intention of telling a story that is yours and personal and maybe sacred. Maybe you never share it out loud, right? Than to take a photo for social media purposes. Like they're
Yeah.
two very different things.
I know, which is ironic because I have a course in the works that is about helping heart-centered entrepreneurs create better storytelling images to share about their business because I know how to do that too.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, it's all storytelling, right? On some
mhm.
level. I just think it's such a fascinating perspective of using the lens, the camera lens to it's almost, and maybe I'm wrong. I'm this is a question, but a statement at the same time. It feels like it's a way to really reframe, pun intended, and shift your perspective on how you're perceiving. Because when you go in with the lens of, did you say love, light, and laughter, or love, light?
Yeah, so light, love, and laughter is the gratitude practice because that's the
Yeah.
self-awareness pillar. I know there's a lot of things to remember.
Well, but just using that as an example, if I'm thinking about, because dementia is it's challenging, and I'm thinking about, but if I'm viewing it with the intention of taking a photo with a story that is based in love, light, love,
Yes.
and laughter, that softens things. It might bring in grief too. I mean, it can bring in a lot of things. I can imagine that being a really powerful, having an impact. But just as I'm experiencing it in my mind as you're telling it, my mind and my heart, right? And I'm just thinking, oh, what I love about it, because I don't know how the rest of the world works, but like for me, when I'm in a tough spot, when there's a challenge or when there's like, especially if it's someone else for some reason, right? Especially if it's a loved one going through something hard and there's just no control. You're a witness to it and you're a space holder for it. I think to consider it from a new angle, it takes me out of my ruminating. It takes me out of that rut. It takes me out of that space where I can't get out of the same thoughts. But now you've given me something to think about in a new and different way so that I can show up with my lens. And I'm a human who I love taking pictures. I hate being in pictures, but I love taking them.
Mhm.
And so I can see that being because I think some of the hardest things in the healing journey is to shift our perspective, to reframe things, to see things accurately, and also understand that like the coin has two sides. That phrase was brought up to me recently, and it's like there's more to it than we ruminate on. And we can find things that are comforting. We can find things that are love. We can find things that do bring light and laughter, even in the hardest times. I mean, that's the way I've gotten out of all my hardest times is light and laughter and love, I believe. It's like you love yourself through it. You have people who can love you through it. You find the light, you trust the process, your divine, support, whatever that looks like. And humor for me has always been a way out.
Mhm.
So
Exactly.
that's just one part of your lens method. And I'm all in.
Exactly.
I'm like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
excited. Like,
Well, and I forgot to even say or share what LENS stands for. So LENS is an acronym. It stands for light, empathy, now, meaning present moment, and storytelling. And it's also
mm,
about, the stories that we tell ourselves. So it's storytelling through images and inner storytelling. And something else you reminded me of, my foundation workshop is about practicing mindfulness as really it's about getting into a creative flow state by connecting with your senses and nature and then making images about what those feeling states represent, like grounding or flow. And it's about getting out of your head and getting into your creative mode so that you can, it's kind of like a walking meditation practice in a way.
yeah. I'm curious. I think I already know the answer, but I don't want to make assumptions. This feels like it's more about the process of taking the pictures versus like how to take a picture in a way that's formatted properly.
Yeah, I know that most of the time people come in. to the world a little bit, the lens method world, because they think, oh, I want to take better photos.
Yeah.
And you will take better photos when you do this process because you're just taking more photos and you're looking at them differently. And I teach you about how to look for light, and there are sort of things sprinkled
Oh,
in
cool.
there
So it's a little
about,
bit of both.
yeah, there's things sprinkled in there because I know people want to feel good about the pictures that they're taking, and they want to, feel like they want to share them, or, even if it's just in the little group. Um, so yeah, so that's definitely sprinkled in because I know that that's important too. It's just not something that I get psyched about as much.
No, I love that though. And here, I'm an empath as well. And so like how that feels to me, because I couldn't imagine how you could have the lens method and everything the way you've been describing it, and then also teach people how to like actually like from a technical perspective format a picture or a photo, right? Like how to set it up. But what you just said and the way you said it to me feels like you actually weave it in beautifully so that it doesn't feel like an assignment or like a task. It feels like it's just part of the flow, and they might not even realize they're being instructed how to take a picture. Just the way
Yeah.
you said it, I was like, oh, that feels completely different, and it feels like it's blended in a way that is it just feels like part of the whole experience, and it is like part of the complete picture, which is lovely because then you don't feel like something's missing either, but you also don't feel like you have to go from like, because what you're describing to me is like heart-centered, soul-centered light work, and you don't have to fight with between the logical, okay, this is how you take a picture, ABC, and then get into your heart and go, and this is what I'm feeling, and this is what the story that this is about. So I don't know, and I've never taken the class, I don't know anything about it, but from a vibe perspective, from an empathy perspective, I'm like, what a beautiful way to create a tapestry of where the logic meets the heart and soul.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I just think it sounds like the way you present it and the way you talk about it and the way you share your story, it feels very much like, um, I don't know, blended in a way that is just like this crafted alchemy versus piece by piece that feels separate. I'm kind of into alchemy lately.
Yeah, I love that word too.
Yeah. That's so awesome. So, did you use? You said this method came from the photography that you did with the sisters and the breast cancer survivors, and or was it kind of a whole picture thing?
Yeah, it's sort of, that was one of the seeds, and then that were bricks for the foundation, and then having my son, and then making photos during COVID with my phone, and not being able to, do my brand photography work because I was, with my family and nature, and then yeah, I mean, I think that it's really, like I said, everything that I've done throughout my whole life and all the work that I've done as a photographer has really informed the lens method. And I think there was a time where I was like grappling with the name. I was like, maybe it should be reframe because there's a lot about that too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's something that I'm I feel like is my true purpose work in this world for sure, because I feel like it can really help a lot of people, especially people that maybe even don't feel like they take good pictures, or it's actually been a really wide range of people. Some people are photographers that have taken it, that think that it helped them reignite their love for photography.
Mm.
And then there's people that are just kind of always been interested in photography, but never really thought they were good at it. And now they feel more like empowered around it, and just, that there's and actually, I received a really nice message recently from someone who said that she's still a year later, still using the lens method, and it helped to bring her out of a depression that she had been in. So that's just really, I feel like there's so much potential for it, and it's much bigger than just me and my story and I feel like it's time to sort of flip the script on what we're doing with our digital devices. We can use them as a force for good in our lives. There's this post-it note that I have that I didn't come up with this phrase, but I love it so much that it says depth over dopamine.
Mm.
you know,
Yeah.
and that's where what I'm really passionate about. And, even for younger people too, I want to find a way to use the lens method for teens and young, people even younger. So yeah.
So, are your classes all live, Or do you have both options, or do you not? I don't know. I guess maybe I
Yeah.
started in a weird place there, but
No, yeah, yeah. No, I'm gonna have soon. I'll have them available as pre-recorded, but then with online group support.
so like a
So that,
community where you can
yeah,
connect and okay.
yeah. So then this way, you can also kind of come at it, wherever you are. You don't necessarily have to do it at the same. Eventually, that's how it'll be. It'll be where it's like, okay, we're meeting. It's not available yet, but it's coming. Where we'll be meeting on a specific day on Zoom where it's a photo sharing session. So it's like, and there'll be like different themes depending on what month it is, kind of thing.
How far out do you think you are in launching that? I'm asking because this podcast isn't going to go out for another 2, 3 weeks. So I'm just
Yeah,
like, is it that close?
I think it's very close. I feel like it might need a little bit more time than that because I'm there's a few things going on in my personal life. I might have to move and all this stuff. But there's definitely maybe there could be a way to sign up to be notified. What I could do too is I have a new guide it's about a 5-minute practice to look for light, to make photos of light and connect with wonder in that way. Because that's kind of step one of the L.E.N.S method, right? Light is what the L in L.E.N stands for. Photography is about the study of light, but also this is about connecting with your inner light. It's about really connecting with your inner child again. It's like, remember when we would just get excited? I still do when you see a rainbow on a wall or, something.
Yeah.
So that's really what that guide is about. So I'd be happy to share that. And then they can be on my email list and I can let them know when the program is available.
Yeah, I definitely want to make sure I put links in the show notes, whatever that looks like, because I want to make sure people know how to find you. Yeah, so for sure we'll get that information. I was just curious because I'm like, well, I mean, how close is it? Is it possible that it'll be ready, in a couple of weeks? I'm not trying to rush you. I'm just asking so to put like expectations out into the listeners' world so that they know, how long is this a year out? Is this a couple months
No,
out? Is this
it's
a
a
couple
couple
weeks?
months. It's a
Yeah,
couple
got it.
months.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
because I'm kind of first working on this. I'm putting out this course first that's about how to create your own better storytelling images for heart-centered entrepreneurs as a way to help. I'm also kind of sharing about the L.E.N.S method through that content. And so because a lot of the time people, I think that they sort of need this sort of half an hour conversation with me to get what the L.E.N.S method means.
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm kind of starting with that so that I can kind of get some more visibility around it and do podcast episodes like this and those kinds of things. So, but it's really what I'm so excited about. I just kind of feel a little bit like there's definitely a lot of people that are ready and excited to do this. And it's really just about, getting the pieces together and getting organized about it.
Yeah. So your other class that you were telling us about in the where you had the gallery, that was a live class that you taught?
Yeah, that was live. It was in person too.
Oh, in person. Cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. That was amazing. That was through a grant. And, but the next one, that I launch will be live. I will teach it live and it'll be, the same thing just on Zoom instead of in person. And
Yeah.
it's just going to be for 10 to 12 people. And then after that, I also have that standalone foundation course that's going to go out sooner, which is about making photos of nature as a mindfulness practice. And that's really a great way to get started with the L.E.N.S method and just, kind of dip your toe in and understand how it works and that kind of thing. So yeah, there'll be a lot of different avenues and possibilities. I'd love to have a membership as well so that people can kind of keep the conversations going because it is something that really builds over time and kind of helps people more over time as well.
Yeah. And to be clear, I wasn't asking because I think one is better than the other. I think they're different. And I think people have different preferences in different times of their life. I just really wanted clarity. So people knew, like, am I waiting for a live course? Am I waiting for a recorded course? Are both an option? Do you do speaking events? Right. Like all that.
All of it. Yeah. All of it's going to be available. I think that, the first cohort is going to be live and then it'll be recorded. And then I'll do live ones periodically, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just think I'm such a big believer in community and support. And I just think there's just something about knowing we're not alone when we're on, especially when we're on the healing journey, but really at any time. I mean, who wants to be alone, right? I think there's just something about finding people that resonate and have something to offer. And it feels like within your story, you have a lot of little bits that you've navigated and challenges and obstacles that you've overcome that the method came from. But then also outside of the lens method, just to be in community with someone like you who has had experiences with bipolar disorder and has had experiences with the loss of a really close loved one and has had experiences with, winning awards around a passion that has led to other things. I don't know. I just think there's so many layers to your story that is so unique and beautiful, but also could potentially be really supportive for someone out there who's listening that just might feel lost, alone, and afraid and doesn't really know where to start. And I think sometimes, and I'm not just talking about bipolar here. I'm talking about labels in general, whether it's award-winning photographer or, bipolar disorder or, I mean, pick your thing. It doesn't matter what the societal norm says, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. I think labels sometimes can be confusing and can add a lot of pressure.
Mhm.
And so I just feel like there's so much in your story that can benefit others. And it sounds like you're going to be offering community that will invite people to lean into support, whether it be from you or your network. And I'm all about that. I'm all about showing up in a way where we can help someone who didn't know that kind of help was possible. And I think
Mhm.
that's where I'm landing with your story today and the things that you've shared. And I just think it's amazing and creative and courageous to step into your purpose and what you're doing. And I'm a big believer. Well, maybe I shouldn't say it this way because I don't want to imply that if you don't do this, it's a bad thing. For me, for my journey, I'm going to say it that way. For me and my journey, I'm a big believer that for me to stop hiding my challenges and my story and my truths liberated me and gave me freedom and a level of self-compassion that I didn't know was missing. And so I like meeting people who are doing that. And I don't know, I've just met so many people along my journey who have been like, God, I didn't even know anybody could understand this. And it's like,
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I know it's everybody's journey is different. I'm not saying that I understand exactly your things, but I'm saying that there's things that you've said and then I've responded where we know that we get something that a lot of people don't.
Right. And I would just
Yeah.
say too, I feel like my journey has been more through anxiety than than bipolar disorder. I feel like I really relate to the people with anxiety because I've just been there so many times.
Yeah.
I know what that feels like. And I'll just share one last thing about my story because I feel like it's kind of helped lead to the lens method too. I finally started to start sharing my story about my mental health journey during the pandemic. And I started by making self portraits around the idea of sleep or lack of sleep. And that was really how it started. I was like, you know what? I feel like everyone, mental health is so important. And we're not really talking about it in a way that feels accessible or I don't know. There was just something feeling like missing or people aren't as open about it still. And so I just wanted that to be, I feel like, more than my sister's journey with breast cancer, my journey has been with mental health. And I just feel like um, it's just so important to talk about and share, what has helped and and I just add too that there's a, have you ever heard of Dr. Lisa Miller?
I don't think so.
Well, she's done a lot of studies on people's brains that have been through mental health challenges, and she's found that there's books, and she's very much on the speaker circuit now with her books and everything, and basically discovered that people who have some sort of spiritual connection or not necessarily religion but could be religion, those are the people that recover more quickly or don't have any challenges to begin with. And so it's really fascinating to me because I feel like my journey really went in tandem with my spiritual reconnection. And I just feel like that's something that is super important to me. I share a lot about, my story through my sharing of my slides during the L.E.N.S method program. And I'm not saying, I'm not, I don't know, I'm not trying to like influence people in any sort of way or direction, but just sharing through my example, my story, and hopefully it may spark something in other people in that way.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful thing to be an inspiration to another human or to be inspired by another human. Doesn't even matter which way it goes, right? I just think inspiration is such a magical, I'm going to use the word magical experience. And it sounds like you've found a way to do that, actually many ways to do that within and throughout your journey. And I just think that's incredible. And I'm really grateful that you shared your story here today on the podcast. And I'm curious, I do this a lot at the end of the podcast, and I feel like it's such a big thing. Just opening a door for like another whole conversation. But I'm curious, specific to anxiety, because you brought up that that's something that you really deeply resonate with. Do you have, like, other than the L.E.N.S method, because I know that that's like the thing, like the longest, most complete answer is the L.E.N.S method. That's what I heard from you today. But do you have just like a simple, quick thing that could support someone who is just dripping in anxiety in a moment? I get my anxiety, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, I would say it's about the senses. So have you ever heard that thing where it's like five things you can see, four things you can feel, three things you can, I don't know, what is it? Taste. I don't know how many things you can taste in that one moment, but smell, all of that. It really helps me. And also just breath work, just like breathing, and really kind of just being where my feet are, like just kind of being in my body, that, reconnecting into my body.
Yeah.
That's really the way that helps me. And also mindfulness teachers will say, look for the most beautiful thing that you can see in your immediate surroundings,
Yeah.
whether it's like light coming in through a window or a flower or whatever it might be, and really focus in on the details of it. That can also really help.
Yeah. That to me is a grounding practice and a becoming present practice. And I love that you said that. Those are two of my go-tos as well. And maybe in different ways, sometimes in those exact ways, but just to come into like the space that you're in and be really present there. And it is about the external versus the internal in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Like you really are looking for things. If it's a sensory thing that's different, then that's internal and external, like blending together. But yeah, thank you for that. That's a lovely reminder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. I always have to think of it myself too with my son and his big emotions. So,
Yeah. It's great that we can hold space for each other and have reminders that are repetitive, because I feel like repetition and similar answers for the same thing, talking about the same thing, to me is validation. I'm
yeah.
like, oh, well, it's working for more than one human, so maybe I should explore that, or maybe I could explore that. Not even should, but I might want to. I might get to. I might need to. I don't know until I try, but let's explore. And I think
Yeah.
that's amazing. Is there an easy, like, do you have a website? I just am wondering if like auto, like in the audio, if there's a easy way for people to find you just kind of
Yeah.
in one spot.
Yes. Yeah. You can find me on my website. It's careyKirkella.com, CareyKirkella.com. And there's a few guides in there too that are accessible. So I'm creating a new website right now, but it's always going to be CareyKirkella.com. So that'll work.
Beautiful. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today. I
Thank
feel
you.
like that's a wrap. How do you feel? Do you feel like we
Yeah.
landed in a good spot?
Yeah, I'm so grateful. I was just say just one last thing, that the L.E.N.S method is kind of like taking one of those senses and really going deep on it, right? Like your
Awesome.
sense of sight.
That's awesome. I'm excited to dig into this L.E.N.S method. I mean, just the way you described it and how energetically it feels to me as we're having this conversation is really cool. I appreciate the time. I'm so grateful you spent time on the mic with me today, and I look forward to more. I hope we connect again.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
All right. Bye. Have a great
Bye.
day.
You too.